In the last class, we were having discussion specifically about the mechanism of exception handling in Spring. When I was talking to you about the exception handling in Spring, then actually I told you that when we are not writing any exception handler, then the basic error controller is actually responsible for handling the exception. And how exactly it is handling the exception? Definitely you are always getting the internal server error 500. An internal server 500 error is something that is not always actually the reason of the error. What if we wanted to change this behavior? If we wanted to change this behavior, then definitely we have to write down our own custom exception handler. To write down the custom exception handler, there are two approaches available. If I'm talking about the very first approach, then the very first approach is to create a method in controller to handle the exception. And second thing is available that you need to define another method inside the controller class and annotate this method with @ exception handler annotation. Definitely when you are going to do that means actually you are going to create a method. And if I'm talking about the name of the method, then definitely the name of the method is going to be any, but the method has to be annotated with @ exception handler annotation. In the @exception handler annotation, we have to write down exception class name dot class. And definitely the object of the exception class will be automatically provided by Spring container to this method. Now inside this, whatever code you wanted to write down, you can write down. For this method, I told you that it can accept a lot of arguments. Like for example, when I open the official documentation in front of you, then you can see that these are the arguments that actually it can accept. So it is something that is, you can say that highly customizable. You can pass n number of arguments. You can customize error message very, very easily. But if you are writing only the exception handler method in the controller, then definitely writing the exception handler method in the controller is not a very good choice. And the reason is very, very simple. Why exactly it is not a very, very good choice? Simple point number one. If you are having 50 controllers, and in the 50 controller, if you wanted to handle the same exception, then would you love to write down the same method for the 50 times? Answer is definitely no, because it will make your code boilerplate. It will make your code actually wet code. So what is the solution? The solution is to write down a exception handler class, or you can say that it is better to write down a separate class. The separate class is going to work as global exception handler. The class is going to work as global exception handler, and the global exception handler class is actually going to be annotated with @controller advice annotation, controller advice annotation. And under this in this class, we have to define all the method to handle the exception. Definitely, if you are handling the 20 types of exceptions, then you can write down the 20 types of method. This is going to be a very much like a single point of control for the exception handling. This is going to be very much like a single point of control for the exception handling. Now the next part, the actual mechanism is extremely simple, but also very, very flexible also. Definitely, this is actually giving us full control over the body of the response as well as on the status code. It actually provides mapping of several exceptions to the same method to be handled together. It makes good use of the newer response entity. One thing to keep in mind that to match the exception declared with @exception handler, we have to use the argument of the method also. So exception handling is something we have done, and the same thing was provided to you in the evaluation also. The same type of questions were also provided to you in the exception also. Now I'm going to the next part, and today I am going to discuss about the next thing. While having the discussion about the next thing, let me directly start with creating a project, and using this project we will try to understand what exactly our demand is. Last time we actually ended up with the exception number, with the example number 22. See, initially I'm going to copy paste this example, and while copying pasting this example, this is example number 23, and it is all about the validation. And it is all about the validation. If I'm talking about all about the validation, first of all, let me resolve the dependencies. So pressing Alt plus F5 for this project. Now all the dependencies are going to be resolved, and actually all the dependencies are actually getting resolved. First of all, initially, if I'm talking to you about the dependencies, then you can see that we are having Spring Boot Starter Web dependency. We have a Spring Boot dev tool dependency. Test dependency is also available. We are not very much interested to understand this dependency. But right now, I'm going to make following changes in the class. I'm going to make following changes in the class. So for example, everyone, let me actually delete a lot of things that are not very much useful. And similarly into the controller also, I'm going to make a significant amount of changes. First of all, let me start with the model. Into the model, I'm going to create a class. The name of the class that I'm writing is customer. Initially, I'm writing a class. The class I'm writing, the name of the class that I'm writing is going to be the customer class. After writing the customer class, then we are writing one thing. The thing is going to be the first point that we are writing is we are writing private integer ID. After writing the private integer ID, then we are writing here, let's say that private string name, that is name of the customer. After name of the customer, then I'm maintaining one more thing that is called private local date. And let's say that I'm going to maintain one thing that is called last purchase date. After writing the last purchase date, then we are writing the next part. Into the next part, we are mentioning this is going to be, let's say that private string, I'm talking about the email. And after the email, let's say that I'm talking about mobile number also. Let's say that initially I'm talking about the mobile number. It is available in the form of a long field. Then I wanted to generate the constructor, and initially I'm generating the constructor from the superclass. Then I'm talking about again generating the constructor. Again, after generating the constructor, again I'm generating the constructor from the parameterized class. Thereafter, I'm talking about the setter and the getter method, and the setter getter methods are also generated. ToString method is right now not required for me. ToString method is right now not required for me. So listen, one point. Simple class customer is created, and you can see that customer class is actually a Pojo class, that is plain old Java object class. In this plain old Java object class, name of the class is customer. We are having ID, we are having name, last purchase rate, email, and mobile number is available here. Then what exactly I wanted to do? I wanted to actually apply the, let's say that CRUD kind of operations. So this time actually name of the controller that I am writing is going to be customer controller. This time the name of the controller that actually I am writing is going to be customer controller. Into the customer controller, first of all, let's say that I wanted to maintain a list of students, list of customers. If I wanted to maintain the list of customers, then initially the very first thing that actually I am going to do is I am writing private list of customer, and definitely then we are writing the thing that is called customer link. And after writing this customer list, then first of all, I'm creating one method. The method is annotated with the post construct, and into the post construct method, again, I'm going to do a simple job. Let's say that I'm writing one method, that is the name of the method that I'm writing is public void setup method. Into this setup method, I'm just providing value to the customer list. So I'm writing customer list equal to new array list. Customer list equal to new array list is what exactly I am writing. Then definitely, because I wanted to add a customer. To add a customer, which type of mapping is expected? What HTTP method shall I use? Please write on the chat. What HTTP method shall I use when I wanted to add a customer? Yes, I wanted to apply the mapping, and the mapping type is going to be the post mapping. Into this post mapping, I have to use the value annotation. Into the value annotation, I have to specify the URL pattern. So for example, if I'm going by the URL pattern, then the URL pattern is going to be customers. Is that okay? The URL pattern is going to be customer. Then I'm talking about method. If I'm talking about the method, then definitely from the method, I think it is reasonable to say that we should return the one thing that is called the response entity. Into the response entity, we should call one thing that is called the string. And after calling the thing that is actually called the string, then let's say that I'm writing the name of the method, and the name of the method is going to be the customer method. Name of the method is going to be the customer method. Into the customer method, then I'm writing one thing that is called customer. And after writing the customer, then we are writing the thing that is called the response. Sorry, I wanted to convert the same thing into the from JSON to Java. So definitely I have to use the request body annotation. I have to use the request body annotation. So practically, actually, what I need to do, whatever be the customer object is available, definitely I wanted to add the customer object to this thing. And once actually customer object is added to this thing, then I wanted to return an object of the response entity. And when I'm talking about returning the object of the response entity, so we are writing return new response string. Into the response string, the one thing that we are going to write down is going to be that is customer added successfully. After writing the customer added successfully, then the next thing I wanted to provide is the HTTP status code. And definitely right now the HTTP status code I can return is HTTP status dot created. First method is clear for all. Is that method clear for all? That's nice. That's good. So actually customer controller is created. Apart from the customer controller, a lot of things are also there that actually we have done. Now let me do a simple job. Now let me do a simple job. Controller advice is there, global exception handler is there, exception handler, no handler found exception, response entity, error detail, etc., etc. So let this code be as it is. This is actually, so this is an exception handler when no URL. When actually, let's say that URL is invalid. Okay. Apart from this, one more class is available. The name of the class is called error detail class. Let it be as it is. Let it be as it is. Now I wanted to run this application. So I'm writing Alt Shift XB. When I'm writing Alt Shift XB, server is getting started. After starting the server, definitely I have to go to the postman. And after going to the postman, the URL is going to be http://localhost:8080/customers. Then I'm talking about the type of request, and the type of request is going to be the post request. With the post request, definitely I have to create an object of the customer. And to create the object of the customer, the first thing that I need to write down is going to be the ID. The first thing that actually I wanted to write down is going to be ID. And let's say value for ID that I'm writing is 1. Thereafter, I am talking about the next thing that is called name. For the name, let's say that I'm writing the value and the value is going to be ABC. For the third thing, I'm talking about the last purchase date, and for the last purchase date, let's say I'm writing this is 2022-12-31st. Then I'm writing the email, and this time if I'm talking about the email, then the email is going to be simple a@b.in, comma. Then final thing I'm talking about the mobile number, and value for the mobile number that actually I'm going to write down is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Some random mobile number I have already typed. Thereafter, I'm clicking on the send button. After clicking on the send button, I'm getting the message that is customer added successfully, which is perfectly okay. Which is perfectly okay. So initially I try to add this when the first thing that I added here is I'm opening the controller. When I'm hitting the controller, then I'm talking about the very first type of request. Into the very first type of request, we have written this part. And this time when we are sending the request using that data where ID is 1, name is there, last purchase date is available. So all data is this time valid. And for the valid data, definitely everything is going to work perfectly. Everything is going to work perfectly. There is no need to worry, no need to think. Now, going to the next portion. And while actually talking about the next portion, let's say this time we are actually slightly tricking the system. How we are exactly slightly tricking the system? So for example, let's say that I wanted to add a new student, and this time value for ID I am writing 0. Name, let's say that I am writing is going to be null. Purchase date, for example, let's say I am writing 2024 or 2050-12-31. Email ID I am writing, let's say that a.in, and mobile number I am writing, let's say this one. What do you think? Is that a valid data? Is that a valid data? Answer is definitely no. This is not a valid data. Then I'm clicking on the send. Still, I'm getting the message that is customer added successfully. Are you happy with this message? Are you happy with this message? Answer is no. Definitely nobody is happy with the message. So this time what exactly going on? Whatever data that is coming from the JSON. whatever data that is coming from the JSON, actually this data is getting converted into Java object without checking whether the value is okay or not. So this time, what is our demand? The demand is that we wanted to validate the data before actually going for the deserialization. Is that point okay? Before going to deserialization, actually we wanted to validate the data. This is what exactly my demand is. Point is clear? Everyone, is that point clear? That's nice. So right now, I'm talking about validating the data. If I wanted to validate the data, then definitely I have to talk about the next part, that is the content of the today. And in the content of the today, I'm going to discuss with you about that thing, that how to apply the validation. Okay. If I'm talking about the validation, then definitely validation can be failed due to multiple reasons. For example, let's say that the information that you are providing is not a valid information. For example, let's say for the customer, somebody try to insert the value null. For the ID, somebody try to insert the value that is 0. Somebody try to use the duplicate value. Other applications can also possible. Let's say that somebody wanted to go for the purchase, but the wallet balance is insufficient. If the wallet balance is insufficient, then definitely again actually the validation is going to be failed, or we can say that the transaction is not going to be performed. Now the very first question arises that how to report such kind of failure to the client, such that client can be a human if it is a B2C application, and client is going to be a machine if it is going to be a B2B application. Now the thing is that if it is a simple B2C application, in that case, if you are providing the response in the form of a string, then definitely this is going to work perfectly okay. But if it is not a human, if it is a B2C application, in case of B2C application, is it reasonable to return a string response? In case of B2C application, is it reasonable to return a string response? Definitely no, because machine is not able to understand what is okay or what is the mean of this error messages. How to process this? If I'm talking about the communication among the machines, then definitely for the communication among the machines over the HTTP protocol, we are having concept of status code, such that if the status code is from 200 and onwards, then this says that information is successful. On the other hand, if it is from somewhere 300 and so on, then it is going to be redirectional. If it is some 400 and so on, then this is what you would love to call it, that you would love to call it client error. If it is 500 or above, then definitely you would love to call it next one, that is actually called server error. So this time, can I say that instead of returning a string message, it will be good to return a HTTP status code? Yes or no? In this condition, instead of actually returning a simple string message, it will be good to return the HTTP status code. Okay. So if I'm talking about the HTTP status code, so let us talk about the HTTP status codes also, and I will tell you what is problem with them also. So I'm writing HTTP status code 4xx. Okay. So just actually I'm opening something that is random first 2-3 URLs. Into the first 3 URLs, I'm talking about the HTTP, and specifically directly I'm jumping to the URL that is of 400. Into the 400 series, the first URL 400 bad request. Have you used it multiple times? Yes. This actually clearly shows that server is not able to process the request due to client error. Means actually the request syntax is actually improper, or the size of the request is too large to serve. The next thing is actually available, that is called the unauthorized. In case of unauthorized, you can say that similar to 403 forbidden, but specifically when the authentication is required and has failed or yet to be provided. So can I say when some area is login protected, but if you are not logged in, but you try to access this area, then ultimately you will end up with the 401 error code. Is that okay? That 401 is an error code to show the status that the client is not authenticated. Still, it is trying to access the area which is not an authenticated one. Is that okay? This is what your 401 status message is. If I'm talking about the 402, then the 402 is payment required. It is reserved for the future use. The original intention was that code might be used as some part of digital care code or micropayment. For example, GNU Taylor, well, overall payment required is sufficient. 404 not found. Multiple time you have come across. The requested resource actually doesn't exist on the net. Now coming to the next status. The next status is actually called the 403, that is called the forbidden. The request contained valid data and was understood by the server, but the server is actually refusing the action. This may be due to user not having the necessary permission for a resource or needing an account of some sort or attempt to prohibit action. This code is also typically used if the request provided authentication by answering the www authentication header field challenge, but the server did not accept this authentication. The request should not be repeated. Lot of things, but particularly if I'm talking about only this part, the 403 forbidden error code may be due to user not having necessary permissions for a resource or needing an account of some sort or attempting a prohibited action. So this time can I say whenever user is not having sufficient permission, etc., or due to any XYZ reason, if the server is not able to process the request. In this condition, it will be good to return the HTTP status code 403. Make sense? 401 is a specification that shows that you are not logged in. But 403 shows that no matter whether you are logged in or not, it's a different area. But you are not authorized to do this action or you do not have sufficient resources to perform this action. So can I say that 403 is a common HTTP status code that actually shows that, hey client, I'm not able to perform all that operation due to this XYZ reason. Is that clear? Is that clear? I'm not able to perform due to this some XYZ reason. This is what exactly I am writing. Then going to the next portion. Then I am going to the next portion. And while going to the next portion, you can see that 404 is for the not found. The remainings are also there, but we are not going to discuss about them. We are not going to discuss about them. You can say that approximately some 29-30 responses are available. Okay, coming back. So let's say, now give me, let me tell you two situations. The very first situation, let's say that there is one user available. Say the name of the user is Ramesh. Ramesh wanted to perform the online transaction. He has selected actually some product on the Amazon. After selecting the product on the Amazon, he is proceeding for the payment. When he is proceeding for the payment, then he is selecting the mode of payment UPI. And when he is selecting the mode of payment UPI, then ultimately, let's say that he has opened the PhonePe app. After opening the PhonePe app, he wanted to make the payment of 5,000 rupees, but in his account, we are having just, let's say, 2,000 rupees. What do you think? Will the transaction be successful? Definitely not. So in this condition, can we return the status code 403 because user is not having the sufficient funds? So this time, can I say that 403 status will be written by the PhonePe app and this status will be given to the payment API. From the payment API, this status will go back to the Amazon.com and there actually user may get the message that you do not have the sufficient fund or exactly because this is 403, so not able to predict any error. Actually, ultimately, customer will not be able to, you can say that, make the payment, and only having the status 403 is not giving us the broad picture that what exactly went wrong. Getting my point? This time, actually, when 403 status is written, let me go for the next case also. There is one more user available. Let's say that the name of the user is Sham. And this time, actually, Sham again wanted to perform an online transaction of 5,000 rupees. He is on some online portal, let's say Amazon.com. He has purchased a commodity of rupees 5,000 rupees. Then he is proceeding for the checkout. When he is proceeding for the checkout, this time he is on the payment gateway page. On the payment gateway page, let's say that he has selected the mode of payment credit card. Now, actually, the payment gateway is demanding for credit card number, name, CVV, date of birth, expiration date, etc., etc. He has provided all that date, and after providing all that date, then definitely, ultimately, the request will go to the bank server. Now the request is going to the bank server, and the bank server found that this credit card is expired just 3 days ago. Now, when the credit card is expired just 3 days ago, so what do you think? Will the transaction be successful? Will the transaction be successful? Answer is definitely no, the transaction will be failed. This time again, how to communicate the failure? Sir, HTTP status code 403. So the HTTP status code 403 will be written by the bank server to the gateway API. The gateway API will return the 403 response to the Amazon.in. So this time, please tell me, in both the cases, we are getting the HTTP error response 403 or HTTP status code 403. In both the cases, when we are getting the HTTP error code 403, what do you think? Will there be any useful information available to Amazon.in except for an indication that transaction is not successful? Do you think this is a reasonable practice? You actually come to know that yes, a request is not processed, but why it is not processed? That you cannot map properly using the HTTP status code 403. So HTTP status code 403 definitely shows that request is not able to process, but it does not contain any information with itself. Is that okay? That's nice. So first number point, when we were talking about returning a string response, then the thing is that actually returning a string response is good when we are talking about the B2C consumer. But when we are talking about the B2B consumer, then in case of B2B consumer, string message is not sufficient. We may take help of the HTTP status code. If I'm talking about the HTTP status code, then definitely HTTP status code is a good choice, but it does not contain the sufficient detail that can be used to diagnose, or that can be used for the forensic purpose, that why exactly this is not working or why exactly the request is getting failed. So problem with the HTTP status code 403, is that clear? Problem with the HTTP status code 403, is that clear? Yes, it is. Now, actually, there was a challenge then, sir, how to perform the communication between the two different machines when something is not okay, or we are not able to process the thing. So everyone, again, Internet Engineering Task Force, that is IETF, it comes up with another specification. The name of the specification is RFC 7807. The name of the specification is RFC 7807. The RFC 7807 specification actually allow you to specify the problem detailed in a predefined way that you can use for communication among machine to machine. The RFC 7807 is actually, you can say that, a format how you should write down the problem statements, or how exactly you can fill the problem statement into the JSON object, so that two different machines can understand the same and they will be able to do the diagnosis that why exactly the problem is there. So see, RFC 7807 specification does this by identifying the specific type of problem with a URI. The problem detail can contain other information such as URI that identify the specific occurrence of the problem, which can be useful for support of the forensic purpose. This line, highlighted part, I am repeating again. A specification, that is RFC 7807, does this by identifying a specific type of problem like out of credit with a URI. The problem detail can contain other information such as a URI that identifies the specific occurrence of the problem, effectively giving an identifier to the concept. The time Joy didn't have enough credit last Thursday, which can be useful for support or forensic purposes. Simple JSON and XML document format to suit this purpose. They are designed to be used by HTTP API, which can identify distinct problem types specific to their need. Thus, API clients can be informed of both the high-level error classes and fine granular details, etc. available. Okay. Now, the data model for the problem detail is JSON object. When formatting a JSON object, it uses the application slash problem plus JSON for the media type. Did you remember last time when we were returning the JSON response, then only we were mentioning application slash JSON? The day number 4, day number 5 or 6, when I taught you first time REST API. Then did you remember we were using the produces and the consumes attribute of request mapping? In the produces and the consumes, we are writing application slash JSON. So if it is a normal JSON response, then go for the application slash JSON. If it is a problematic response, then we have to go for application slash problem plus JSON. Now listen, this time, for example, an HTTP response that is carrying the JSON problem details. an HTTP state response that is carrying the JSON problem details. If I'm talking about this first thing, can I call this HTTP header? Can I call this HTTP header? Can I call this HTTP status line? The highlighted line number 16. Can I call it HTTP status line? Absolute silence in the batch. Absolute silence in the batch, which is actually not good. Wait for a while. See this? See this. Day number 5 it was. I was discussing to you about the HTTP methods. First thing, can I say this is actually the request method? Second thing, can I say this is URL? Third thing, that is called the query string. And the fourth is protocol version. Yes or no? The first part is actually referred as the status line. Is that clear? The first part is actually containing the status line. Is that clear? Yes, it is. And if I'm talking about the request header, then a lot of request headers are available there. Now compare this with that. Now compare this with that. Do I am having protocol name? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Do I have the HTTP status code? Answer is yes. Do I have the HTTP status message? Answer is yes. This is my protocol with the version number. This is my HTTP status code. This is what actually referred as the message. And all that is actually part of HTTP status line for HTTP response message. Last time, the example that I told you here, this is an example of HTTP request message. But this time I am talking to you about the example that is of HTTP response message. So can I say this is the HTTP status line? Yes or no? And one more thing that I told you multiple times, that headers are always available in the form of key value pair. Is that information available in the key value pair? Is that line number 16? Is that information available in the key value pair? If you are writing yes, then please tell me which one is the key and which one is the value. This information is simple plain text information. This is not a header information. So this is called HTTP status line for the response message. The HTTP status line for the response message contains the protocol version, HTTP status code. Apart from the HTTP status code, it is containing the HTTP status message. Then if I'm talking about the content type and the content language, can I say that they are available in the form of key and value pair? Yes, it is. So they are the headers. They are the headers. So this time, if I'm talking about the content type, then the content type is going to be application/problem plus JSON. So can I say by looking at this message or by looking at this header directly, can't you think that your machine is going to identify this time it is not a normal response, but it is containing some problem that actually occur at the other hand? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Same thing is applicable for content language also. The response is available in the form of English language. Then you can see that there is next thing available. If I'm talking about this next part, can I say this is my response body? This is a simple JSON object. Can I say this is the response body? Yes, it is. Into the response body, can you see that the first thing is available that is called type, that is containing the URL of the problem. What kind of problem it is? It says what kind of problem it is. It is giving you URL. Thereafter, next thing is available that is called title, and the title says that you do not have sufficient credit. Then detail is available that your current balance is 30, but that cost 50. Next thing is available instance where exactly that mixup takes place, for which request this mixup takes place, what is your current balance is, how exactly you can rectify. So instead of just only returning the HTTP status code 403, don't you think that if we return a proper HTTP response, that is actually a error message or that is actually containing a problem detail, then definitely it will be a good decision. Yes or no? Yes, it is. So actually, how to report the problem from one machine to another machine? already format is predefined into the RFC 7807. It says that into the response, definitely status line will be there. But if I'm talking about the header, into the header for the content type, you should use actually application slash problem plus JSON. That will clearly show that it is not a normal response, but it is a kind of error response. Then simple using the JSON object, actually you can specify whatever information you wanted to write down about the problem detail. If such kind of detail is available, then definitely it will be very easy for the machine to do the forensic. Clear? Yes, it is. And you can actually put the response in any format. Like this time you can see that we are talking about a complex format where type is available, title is available. Additional information is also provided about the error that is completely customizable. Means for the JSON object, actually the keys are not predefined. Only 5 keys are predefined. If you wanted to add additional keys, then you can add also. So if I'm talking about actually what detail a problem object is containing, the first thing that it is containing is a type. The first thing that actually it is containing is a type, and for the type the value is going to be a string. It is actually a URI reference that actually identify the type of problem, that actually identify the type of problem. So this time you can see that there is one more RFC available. The RFC is actually 3986. See, RFC 3986. RFC 3986 is actually talking about the URI. RFC 3986 actually talking about the URI. The next thing is available that is called title, a short human readable description. Then next thing is available that is called status. It is going to be HTTP status code. Normally it will be 403, but in case of login failure, you can write down 401 also. Detail is available, what detail you wanted to provide, then instance is available. These 5 informations are actually you can maintain minimum. Even you can skip some also, but additional information if you wanted to add, then definitely you can add that thing also. Now simple, just a point to point concept. All that thing that I discussed to you so far, is that Java specific or it is something that is common across all the languages? Please tell me. Option number 1, it is specific to Java. Option number 2, this specification is common and every language has to apply the same specification as it is. So I'm asking you the response. All the discussion that I have done so far about the problem details, is that specific to Java? Option number 1, or option number 2, it is common that every language has to implement? Definitely option number 2. So now that the question arises that, sir, okay, this is available as a common specification. So definitely there must be some implementation available in the Spring framework. Yes or no? There must be some implementation available in the Spring. Is actually called the problem detail class. Into the problem detail class, you can see first of all, can I say that only object class is super class of this class? And actually, the representation for an RFC 7807, is that the same number I was talking to you? Is that the same number I was talking to you? So representation for an RFC 7807 problem detail include predefined properties and properties mapped to additional non-standard properties. So can I say that it is containing specification defined properties? How many specification defined properties are there? 5 properties. Type is there, then actually detail is there, title is there, apart from that instance is there, apart from that HTTP status is there. These are the 5 predefined properties. Apart from these 5 predefined properties, additional properties can also be there. For an extended response, an application can add the properties map when using with the Jackson library. The properties map is expanded as top level JSON properties through problem detail Jackson mixin. Forget about the mixin. Forget about the mixin. But take a look at the constructor. Can you see that the first constructor is available, that is called the no argument constructor? Second constructor is available, that is actually talking about the row status code also. And third constructor is available. But main thing, if I'm talking about the methods, if I'm talking about the methods, can you see get detail method is available here? Get detail method is available here. And if I'm talking about the get detail method, again, let me open the RFC 7807. Again, let me open RFC 7807. Into the RFC 7807, if I'm talking about the member detail, is that available as it is according to the standard specification? Yes or no? If I'm talking about the get detail method, get instance method, get status method, get title method, and get type method, can I say that all these 5 methods are according to the standard specification? Yes or no? Apart from that, if you have added the additional properties, then you should add additional properties in the form of a map object that you can access directly using the get properties method. That you can access directly using the simple get properties method. Then lot of setter methods are available, but actually after reading this specification and after coming to problem detail class, isn't it reasonable to say that yes sir, actually the problem detail class is representing the body part, or you can say that the response body part of the problem detail? Yes or no? The problem detail object actually present the body part of the HTTP response when actually you are getting 403 status code and your content type is going to be application slash JSON plus problem plus JSON. Is that clear? Simple logic that the response body is actually represented using the problem detail class. Yes or no? Yes, it is. So for representation of this all that portion, we are having one thing that is called the problem details. That is called the problem detail. So problem detail class is available here. Now next thing. Now next thing. If I'm talking about a proper response entity, then what do you think? Into the proper response, do we are going to get body only, or we should write down the status code also? Shall we have the status code as well as HTTP header also into the proper response? Yes or no? We have done the same thing in when I talk to you that why returning a string response is not good in case of Spring. At that time, I discuss about the same. Whenever you are going to return a proper HTTP response, then into the proper HTTP response, we need actually status code plus header plus body. Returning only the body is not a good choice. That's why we were talking about the response entity. Did you remember? I opened the complete hierarchy that there is one class available, HTTP entity class, but the HTTP entity class actually talk about the header and body, but not about the status. Then we were talking about the response entity class. The response entity class actually talk about the status plus body plus header. That's why whenever you are going to return any response, do not actually return only the message or do not only return the body. You should return a proper HTTP response. Make sense? You should return a proper HTTP response. Make sense? Yes, it is. Then everyone going to the next portion. Going to the next portion. This time actually, okay, sir, problem object is there, everything is there, but how to validate? So main question arises, how to validate, how we are going to get the object of problem? Do we are going to create it or Spring Framework is going to create it? So everything I'm going to take with the help of an example. But for talking about an example, first of all, I'm going to tell you that how to write down the validations, because problem detail object will be created when validation fails. Clear? Problem detail object will be created by the Spring container when some validation fail. So first of all, we must know that how to write down the validation. To write down the validation, everyone, this time you have to add one more dependency, and the name of the dependency is going to be Spring Boot Starter Validation API dependency. You need to add one more dependency. The name of the dependency is called Spring Boot Starter Validation API dependency. So first of all, I'm going to mvnrepository.com, and after going to mvnrepository.com, I'm talking about Spring Boot Starter Validation. I'm talking about Spring Boot Starter Validation Dependency. Can you see that right now Spring Boot Starter Validation Dependency is available? First, I have to copy it as it is. So I'm coming to my project. I'm coming to my project, opening the pom.xml file. After opening the pom.xml file, then into the dependency tag, I am adding the same. Into the dependency tag, I am adding the same version. I don't take care because version is automatically defined into the starter parent. Version is already defined into the starter parent. So first this part is done. Now let me refresh my project. I am pressing Alt plus F5, thereafter updating this project. The project is updated. Coming to the dependency hierarchy. Coming to the dependency hierarchy, can you see that Spring Boot starter validation is here? And if I'm talking about the Spring Boot starter validation, then the Spring Boot starter validation is adding the Tomcat also. It is adding the embedded Tomcat also. Apart from that, it is actually adding one more dependency. That dependency is actually referred as the Hibernate validator dependency. That dependency is actually referred as the Hibernate validator dependency, and the Hibernate validator dependency is talking about the Jakarta validation API. So can I say that Spring Boot starter validation dependency is internally using the Jakarta validation API? Yes or no? The Spring Boot starter validation dependency is internally using the Jakarta validation API. Yes, it is. Now I am going to open the standard Jakarta validation API in front of you. Now that standard Jakarta validation API is available in front of you, that is containing all the detail. First of all, everyone, can you see that the name of the package is jakarta.validation.constraint? The name of the package is jakarta.validation.constraints. This is the first thing that is available there. It contains all the Jakarta bean validation provided constraint, also called the built-in constraint. Then you can see lot of annotations are available here. If I'm talking about the first annotation, the name of the annotation is called assert fall also annotation. Can I say that if I am using this annotation, then actually I have to make sure, or whenever I am providing the value, I have to make sure that the value for this Boolean field must be false. Yes or no? For example, let's say that I am having one class. The name of the class is student. There is one field available, Boolean is failed. And I wanted to make sure that student must be passed, or whatever data I am collecting for the user, then the data of the user should be only of the past student. In this condition, for the is fail, I have to use at the rate assert false annotation. Getting my point? Yes, it is. Similarly, can you see there is one more annotation available that is called assert true annotation? Similarly, can you see there is one more annotation called assert true annotation? Can you see that if I wanted to specify the decimal maximum value? For example, let's say that we are working in a company where maximum annual package is going to be 100.00 lakhs. So in this condition, we can use decimal max. Answer is yes. Similarly, decimal mean is available, like actually there is minimum wages available, that actually one organization has always to follow. Is it containing digits only? Is it containing email? Is the date is of future? Is the date is of future or present? Can we specify the maximum value, minimum value? Yes, we can specify. It is going to contain only negative value. It is going to contain negative or zero value. The value should not be blank. The value should not be empty. The value should not be null. So can you see that all these annotations are looking helpful whenever we wanted to write down the validation related code? There are two approaches available. One approach is you should check everything manually. One approach is available that you should check everything manually. But if you are going to check everything manually, then it is going to be so much problematic for you. You have to write down a huge amount of code. Then don't you think that better to use something that is inbuilt? And what actually inbuilt is Jakarta validation API. How to use the same in the Spring? To use the same in the Spring, we have to use Spring Boot starter validation API. Is that point okay? Yes, it is. Now let me talk about my customer class. Again, when I am coming to the customer class, oops. Again, when I am coming to the customer class, then into the customer class, I have to apply some validation. Among some validation, for example, let's say that the very first thing I am talking to you about the integer ID. Can it be null? Can it be null? No, it cannot be null. So let me talk about one annotation. Can you see that there is one annotation available that is called not null annotation? Can you see? There is one annotation available that is called not null annotation. This annotation actually clearly says that null value is not allowed. This annotation clearly says that the null value is not allowed. So what I have to do? I have to write down the thing that is called the not null. I have to write down a thing that I am writing here is not null. So when I'm using the not null annotation, so definitely means the ID must have a value. Is that clear? Okay, everyone. Can you see that I can specify the message also? I can specify the message also. So when I'm talking about the message, for the message, I am writing the thing that is going to be that please provide value for customer ID. Is that okay? Null is not allowed. Null is not allowed. Then I'm going to talk about the next part. If I'm going to talk about the next part, then let's say that I wanted to provide only the positive value. If I wanted to provide the only positive value, can I use one annotation that is called the min annotation? Yes or no? Can I use one annotation that is called the min annotation? I am saying that ID must have a positive integer value. If the ID is supposed to have a positive integer value in this condition, can I say that I can use the min annotation? Such that min annotation you can apply for the big decimal also, big integer also, and for the primitive data types also. For the primitive data types also, like for byte, short, integer, and long. So if I'm going to use the @min annotation, then to use @min annotation, what exactly I have to do? Into the min annotation, again, I can specify the string message. Yes, I can specify the string message. And one more thing that actually I have to specify compulsory thing that is called the value. One more thing that I have to specify compulsorily that is called the value. So can I say that value is going to be of the long type? So I'm writing that the minimum value is required to be 1. Is that clear? Second thing I am talking about the message. Into the message I am writing that ID must be a positive integer. Clear? ID must be a positive integer. Is that okay? So this is the first validation that actually I have written. This is the first validation that I have written. Similarly, if I'm talking about the name, then definitely can we say that name cannot have the null value? Can we say that name cannot have the null value? Answer is yes. Can I say that name must not contain the empty string? Can I say that name cannot contain the empty string? Yes or no? Okay. One more thing. Say, for example, let's say everyone, if I'm talking about only one annotation, let's say that the name of the annotation is actually called @not null annotation. In case of the not null annotation, it is reasonable to assume that sir, using the not null annotation only prevent null value, but because it is accepting any type. So if a user is providing the empty string, then it will also be accepted. Yes or no? If user is providing empty string, then it will also be accepted. Yes, it is. So if you are going to use the @not null annotation, then definitely null is not allowed. Null is not allowed. Null is not allowed. But if I'm talking about the empty string, though, so definitely empty string is actually allowed. Clear, everyone? So if I'm talking about the empty string, this is allowed. So this is not a very suitable implementation. Then there is one more annotation available. The name of the annotation is actually called @not empty annotation. If I'm talking about @not empty annotation, then can you see that the annotated element must not be null or empty? So can I say that neither null nor empty is allowed? Can I say neither null nor empty is allowed? Yes, it is. So this time I am writing that neither null nor empty, neither null nor empty is allowed. Second point is clear? Second point is clear, yes or no? But, but, if I'm talking about this string, let's say somebody has specified a space only. So what do you think? Is that space a valid name? The name can be even of a single character, that is not a problem. But can a space be a valid name? Answer is no, but unfortunately, this thing is also allowed. Unfortunately, this thing is also allowed. So there is one more annotation available. The name of the annotation is called @not blank annotation. If I'm talking about the not blank annotation, then you can see that the annotated element must not be null and must contain at least one not non-white space character. Must contain at least one non-white space character. So this time, can I say that internally it is using the trim operation? Internally, can I say this is using the trim operation? Yes or no? Yes, it is. It is going to use the trim operation. So thing is that everyone, sometime in the interview, this is very important question. Many times they are actually asking you that what is the difference between not null annotation. Apart from the not null annotation, we are talking about the not empty annotation. And apart from the not empty annotation, we have to talk about the not blank annotation. So this time, keep in mind that neither null not empty is allowed. Neither null not empty is allowed. It actually trim the string or trim the value, then actually check for empty. Is that clear? Yes or no? So this is one more thing that is available. If you wanted to specify the message, then definitely you can specify the message also. Message is a common attribute. Enter the message. Again, I am writing that please, oops, I have not supposed to write down. Please provide name. This is what exactly I am writing. Thereafter, everyone, if I'm talking about the last purchase date, then can I say that last purchase date can be of today or of the past tense? The last purchase date can be of the today or of the past. Yes or no? So if I'm talking about can be of today or the past, then can you see that one thing is available that is called the past or present? Can I say one thing is available that is called past or present? Answer is yes. The value is available that is called past or present. So if I'm talking about the past or present, the annotated element must be an instant, date or time in the past or present. Okay, so let me copy this. I'm using that annotation. The name of the annotation we are writing is going to be at the rest past or present annotation. So here the annotated element must be an instant, date or time in the past or in the defined by a clock provider validation factory, the default clock provider. That is not actually very much important for us. A lot of things are available, but can you see one thing? Can you see one thing that null elements are allowed? Yes, it is. So if you wanted to avoid the null elements, then actually you can use two annotations together. One more annotation that we are writing is not null annotation. Clear? This is initial thing that you have to check that null must not be allowed. So again, we are writing that please provide value for last purchase date. Please provide value for last purchase date. And here actually we can provide the message. The message that we can provide is that last purchase date must be of today or past. Last purchase date must be of today or past. Is that okay? Yes, it is. Similarly, next thing is available that is actually called email. So email is having a predefined format. Yes or no? Just a second. Then going to next part. So if I'm talking about the email, then for the email, do we are having any annotation available? So let me search for letter E. Can you see that there is one annotation available that is called email annotation? Yes or no? There is one annotation available called the email annotation. Into the email annotation. So see, let me copy this annotation. I am writing at the rate email here. When I am writing at the rate email annotation here. So what it is writing? The string has to be well-formed email address. Exact semantic of what make up a valid strings are left to Jakarta bean validation property. It accept actually char sequence means actually string value. Null elements are considered valid. Again, same problem. Null elements are considered valid. Because null elements are considered valid, so again, can I use at the rate not null annotation? Yes or no? Yes, it is. And we are writing here that please provide the email. We are writing here that is please provide the email. Now, actually see what happened if I'm talking about the format of the email. According to the Jakarta Bean specification validation API, if I'm talking about what exactly is the standard format of the email is, then the problem is that actually there is no specification defined for the same. The problem is that the Jakarta Bean validation provider does not provide any specification for this. So even empty string is also allowed. Clear? What is the problem? Even empty string is also allowed. So if you wanted to provide the regular expression, then can you see there is one attribute available that is called regexp? The regular expression and additional regular expression that annotated element must match. The default value is dot star. What is the meaning of dot star? Any character, any number of times. Clear? The meaning of dot star is any character, any number of times. So even if you are typing your name into the email address, it will be accepted. Even if you are typing mobile number in your email address, still it will be accepted. Are you happy with this implementation? Are you happy with this implementation? Answer is no, definitely nobody is happy actually with this implementation. So actually the thing is that we can provide our own custom regular expression. So how to provide the custom regular expression? So we are writing that is regular expression equal to. I wanted to provide the regular expression. So see, if I'm talking about email address, so normally into the email address, I can have letters. Apart from the letters, I can have digits. Apart from the digits, I can have the dot symbol also. Clear? Like kapil.agrawal@masaiSchool.com. So when I'm writing square bracket AZ09 dot means any character from A to Z, any digit from 0 to 9 and dot. These are the three set of symbols that are allowed. Is that clear? These are the three symbols that are allowed initially. Thereafter, I am writing one more symbol plus. What is the meaning of writing plus? The meaning of writing plus is that at least one character from them is required, or simply we can say that one or more character from this set is required. Means can I say that at least one character should be there. Now listen. Next part, then what is required that at the rate. So if you read this expression, then can I say that before at the rate, there must be at least one character. That one character can be from A to Z or from 0 to 9 or from the plus. Yes or no? Before at the rate, there should be at least one character. Or you can say that before at the rate, there can be one or more character. So that if I'm talking about the one or more character, then it should be from the set A to Z 0 to 9 or dot. Is that okay? Yes, it is. Thereafter, everyone, can I say that after at the rate symbol, it can be gmail.com, it can be yahoo.com. Forget about the dot part. Forget about the part that is after dot. But if I'm talking about the part that is after at the rate but before dot, the part that is after at the rate but before dot, can I say that the same sequence is going to be repeated again? Can I say that the same sequence is going to be repeated again? Compare the email ID kapil.agrawal@masaischool.com. Forget about the .com. Forget about the .com. I'm just talking about the kapil.agrawal@masai school. I'm just talking about the kapil.agrawal@masai school. In this condition, everyone, if I'm talking about kapil.agrawal, is that condition satisfied before at the rate? Before at the rate, if I'm talking about the string that is kapil.agrawal, is it containing all the characters that are allowed from small a to small z and the dot symbol? Yes or no? Anything is possible from A to Z 0 to 9 dot. Anything is possible. It is not compulsory that you should have everything. It is not compulsory that you should have everything. Even if you are writing 123 at the rate Masai, then this is also valid. Getting my point? This is also valid even if you are writing 123 at the rate Masai, you are writing ABC at the rate masaischool.com, you are writing ABC123 at the rate masaischool.com, you are writing ABC.123 at the rate masaischool.com. It will work. Clear? Thereafter, everyone, at the rate symbol is there. After the at the rate symbol, when I am talking about that thing again. So for example, let's say that the URL is available that is called 121help.com. Email ID is admin@121help.com. One means numerical one. Then don't you think that this is a better pattern? Because into the URL we can have letters, we can have digits, no problem. Is that okay? So far expression is not completed. So far expression is not completed. I'm talking about only part that is before dot symbol. I'm talking about the part that is before the dot symbol. So this part is also clear that A to Z 0 to 9 and dot, these symbols are allowed, and after at the rate at least one or more symbol is required. Is that clear? After at the rate one or more symbol is required. Now after this I need to place the dot operator. Yes or no? After this I have to use the dot operator. Can I write down dot operator directly? Answer is 100% no. Answer is 100% no. Dot is having the special meaning. Recently, when I was reading this expression in front of you, dot star. Dot means any character. Star means any number of times. Dot means any character. Star means any number of times. So dot is having a predefined meaning. Because dot is having a predefined meaning, that's why I cannot use it here directly. Clear? Otherwise, any character will be allowed. But if you wanted to use dot specifically, then you can use double slash also. Is that okay? Now the combination, that is double slash dot. It is saying that you have to use exactly dot symbol, not any other character. Clear? Then finally, what I wanted to have, it can be .com, it can be .in, it can be .fr, it can be .usa, it can be .ue, it can be anything. So can I say that if I am talking about any string made up from letter A to letter Z, such that minimum number of characters should be 2, maximum number of characters should be 3. Now that pattern is clear. This is what regular expression is. I think you have covered the regular expression in J111, but possibly that nobody remember or nobody has done the sufficient practice. Nobody has done the sufficient practice. So for the email, I have written the regular expression. After writing the regular expression, there is one more thing available, that is called flex. After that, there is one more thing available, that is called flex. And into the flex, the thing that actually I have to write down is I have to use the pattern dot flag. I have to use pattern dot flag dot. Can you see there is one more thing available, that is called case sensitive? There is one more thing available, that is called case insensitive. Now, those who were thinking that sir, into the email ID we can write down everything in the capital letter also. Yes, you can write down. But this time, if I'm talking about the matching, then definitely matching is going to be case insensitive matching. And practically one more thing that you all know, actually the email ID is always case insensitive. No matter whether you are writing the same into the capital letter or you are writing the same into the small letter, it is going to work commonly for you. Is that okay? That's good. Finally, you can provide the message also. Finally, you can provide the message also. So how to provide the message? To provide the message, again, I am writing comma. Thereafter, finally, we are talking about the message. Into the message, we are writing that please provide email in valid, or let's say that please provide a valid email. It will be good to write down. Please provide a valid email. This is what exactly the thing that actually we have to mention. Clear? Is that okay? Yes, it is. Similarly, everyone, if I'm talking about the next part, last thing, can I apply the regular expression on the mobile number also? Like mobile number must be started from the digit 629. After 629, the first digit will be any digit from 629. After that, there should be total 9 digits available. Clear? After it, total 9 digits should be available. Okay, everyone. So let me talk about this. One more annotation is available because email is for the email. Email is actually for the email. So there is actually one more annotation available, and the name of the annotation is actually called the pattern annotation. The name of the annotation is called pattern annotation. So you can say that the annotated char sequence must match the specified regular expression. The annotated char sequence must specify the annotation. So shall I use pattern? So see what exactly I am going to use first of all. Shall I use at the rate pattern here? Yes, it is. If I'm talking about the pattern, then do we have regular expression? Yes, we are having the regular expression. And after writing the regular expression, what can be the value for the regular expression? First digit can be any from 6 to 9. First digit can be any from 6 to 9. Thereafter, thereafter, from 0 to 9, we can have any digit, but how many times? 9 times. Please check. Please check the regular expression pattern. Is that clear? Is that clear? Thereafter, I can write down the message also. And into the message, I am writing that please provide 10 digit Indian mobile number. Is that okay? Please provide 10 digit Indian mobile number. Okay, everybody. Now let's see. So for example, let's say, let me import this and I'm importing this. Thereafter, I'm doing this. So shall I execute this code? Yes, it is. But actually there is one correction that I was expecting from your side. Haven't you read the description properly In this description, there is one thing available that is called care sequence. Do you know what this care sequence is? Do you know what this care sequence is? Let me open the care sequence in Java. What this care sequence is? Is that an interface? Answer is yes. Please take a look at the implementing classes. Please take a look at the implementing classes. A string is a class that implement care sequence interface. A string buffer is a class that implement care sequence interface. A string builder is a class that implement care sequence interface. So don't you think that actually I cannot apply the pattern annotation for the long value? To apply the pattern annotation, I have to change the data type of mobile from long to string. Clear? Read the description very carefully. Otherwise, ultimately, you will find yourself in T for trouble. Please be in the habit of reading the documentation very carefully. How many of you honestly knew that the string class implements the care sequence interface? Those who were aware, write one. Well, better not to talk about that. Better not to talk about that. So simple. I have written the some 5-6 validations. After writing these 5-6 validations, now actually let me relaunch this application and I wanted to see how exactly it is behaving. Let me see how exactly it is behaving. So let me relaunch this application again. I am running the same as a Spring Boot application. And after running the same in the form of the Spring Boot application, after running the same in the form of a Spring Boot application, now let me come to the Postman again. After coming to the Postman again, can you see that I am violating all the rules almost? Can you see that I'm violating all the rules almost? Yes, I'm violating. Let me click on the send button. Once I'm clicking on the send button, then actually still everything is okay. Don't you think this is miserable? Yes. Actually, we have to do one more thing. What exactly we have to do? If I'm talking about the customer controller class, into the customer controller class, I have to use one more annotation, and this annotation is referred as @valid annotation. When I'm writing @valid annotation, then only whatever be the annotations that I have applied, they will be checked here. Clear? So means what will be the sequence? From the Postman, we are providing the JSON object. The request body will say that I will convert the JSON object into the Java object. So I'm going to perform the deserialization. But at the time of performing the deserialization, the @valid annotation will say, hello, hold on. I will check whether the values coming from the JSON is valid or not. If it is everything is valid, then you can continue for the operation. If it is not valid, then I will throw the exception. Clear? If it is not valid, then I will throw the exception. So can I say that before actually performing the deserialization, the @valid annotation is going to check for the value? Yes or no? So it make a property method parameter or method return for the validation cascading constraint defined on that object and its properties are validated when property method parameter or method return is validated. This behavior is actually applied recursively. This behavior is actually applied recursively. Shall I try again? Shall I try again? Let me come to the Postman once again. I'm coming to the Postman once again. Thereafter, I'm clicking on the send button. When I'm clicking on the send button, can you see this time finally I am getting something that is called a error message. Isn't it very small to understand? Isn't it very small to understand? Something that is very big. Okay, the very first thing, can you see the timestamp is available? Very first thing that is available, that is called timestamp. Second thing is available status. Can you see that by default it is providing us the status that is 400, and the 400 status actually stands for the HTTP bad request. Yes or no? This actually stands for the HTTP bad request. Thereafter, one error. If I'm talking about the description, then definitely description is bad request. Description is bad request. Thereafter, everyone into the trace. Can you see that it is throwing a specific type of exception? The type of exception is method argument not valid exception. The type of exception is actually called the method argument not valid exception. So if I'm talking about the method argument not valid exception, then in case of the method argument not valid exception, The first exception, it is reporting on the field name. First exception, it is actually reporting on the field that is called name. So when it is representing the field that is actually called on the name, so can I say one thing, that this is my first error message available? This is my first error message available. Then if I'm talking about the next message available, if I'm talking about the next error message available, then the next error message is actually available for the mobile phone. The next error message is actually available for the mobile phone. Into the message it is providing is that please provide the 10-digit Indian mobile number. It is providing, please provide the 10-digit Indian mobile number. Here it is providing, that is the please provide name. So can I say that validations are applied? But actually the message that we are getting, they are actually very, very complicated. The message that actually we are getting are very, very complicated. Yes or no? Everyone, are you able to sense that actually, yes, the validations are applied properly? The validations are definitely applied properly, but the problem is that, the problem is that this time, actually, the messages are not in the proper format. Actually, messages are available in the very complicated format. They are too long. It will be good if we can process the same. It would be nice if we can process the same. Clear? Yes, it is. So how to process the same? This is something that I'm going to do. But first point, if I wanted to handle the exception in my own way, if I wanted to handle the exception in my own way, then to handle the exception in my own way, first of all, I have to create a global exception handler. Into the global exception handler, I need to write down exception handler for the method argument not valid exception. Yes or no? I have to write down for the method argument not valid exception. Clear or not? Yes, it is. That is method argument not valid exception is something that actually we have to take care. So well, all the messages I have shown you here properly how exactly the thing is working, and definitely the messages are so large. I will actually tell you the way that how to interpret them properly. How to interpret them properly. This is something that actually we are going to have. So this part is what actually we have done. Then remaining error messages are there that are not very important for us, but you can see that one thing there is message validation failed for the object customer error. Errors are there, arguments are there, what type of error is there, complete message is available in the form of JSON object. Complete thing is available in the form of JSON object. So let me tell you that how to handle this thing. So first of all, everybody, shall I go to global exception handler? Answer is yes. Into the global exception handler, what should I do? First thing that I should do is, again, I have to write down the exception handler annotation. Again, I have to write down the exception handler annotation. Let me turn off this application once because dev tool dependency is restarting and it is actually taking out the focus from editor to the output screen. So here I'm writing the name of the exception. The name of the exception we are writing is going to be method argument not valid exception dot class. And if I'm talking about the method argument not valid exception class, thereafter again what I wanted to return. Sir, again I wanted to return a response entity. Again, I wanted to return a response entity. Into the response entity, what exactly I'm going to have initially, just initially. Oh, I'm going to have the message that is of the error details. Is that clear? I'm going to have the message for the error details. And let's say that I'm talking about the error detail. So method name can be any. Method name can be any. So let's say that I'm talking about the handle exception. Into the handle exception, the first thing that we are writing here is going to be that is method argument not valid exception. And here the thing that I'm going to write down is going to be EX. Public response entity error detail handle exception is there. So first of all, everyone, again, I have to create an object of error details. Yes or no? I have to create an object of the error details. Is that clear? After creating the object of the error details, the very first thing I have to specify is the timestamp. And how to specify the timestamp? To specify the timestamp, I have to write down local date time dot now is the method that I need to call. Local date time dot now is the method that I have to call. And if I'm talking about the next thing that actually I have to provide, so first of all, let me come to the error detail class. Into the error detail class, let's say that I have to specify the message also. I have to specify the URI also. Okay. One thing that I'm doing is right now, actually, I do not have the message because how to form the message that I will tell you. But initially, let's say simple. I am writing that this is going to be ex dot get message. Then I wanted to talk about the URI. If I wanted to get the URI, then can I get the object of web request? Yes or no? Is that clear? After writing this part, after writing this part. Now can I write down return new response entity? Into the response entity, the first parameter is going to be the object of the details. Thereafter, I need to return the HTTP status, and definitely I have to return the HTTP status 403. And the HTTP status 403 actually stands for forbidden. Actually stands for forbidden. Is that clear? How to handle this exception? Shall I once again execute this application to check whether it is working properly or not? I am running the same example in the form of a Spring Boot application. Yes, it is. And when I'm running the same example with the help of Spring Boot application again I'm going to the Postman. After going to the Postman, let me hit the same result. And when actually I'm hitting the same result, I'm getting some message. I am getting some message that I'm rewriting. First of all, everyone, do we are getting the timestamp correct? Answer is yes. Do we are getting the timestamp? Answer is correct. Into the message, can you see that this message is something that is actually not very properly formatted? This is coming with the default formatting. Yes or no? Yes, it is. Can I say that URI is available properly? Slash customers was the URL where exactly we face the error. So overall, the thing is that exception handling is working fine. There is no problem. But if I'm talking about the messages, then these messages are something that is actually very, very difficult to handle. Clear? Yes, it is. That's nice. So now I'm going to talk to you about the next exception type, and the next exception type is going to be method argument not valid exception. So how to handle the method argument not valid exception? If you wanted to handle the method argument not valid exception, so just actually let me open the method argument not valid exception. Then I will talk to you how exactly the entire things are going on. 1, 2, 3, 4 validations are done. Problem detail is also done. This RFC is also done, and this part is also done. So I'm going to talk about the class. The name of the class is called method argument not valid exception class. The name of the class is called method argument not valid exception class. So if we are talking about the method argument not valid exception class, then first thing, public class method argument not valid exception. This class is inheriting a class. The name of the class is called bind exception class. The name of the class is called bind exception class, and this class is implementing an interface. The name of the interface is called error response interface. The name of the interface is called error response interface, but take a look at the description. Exception to be thrown when the validation of an argument annotated with @valid fails. This description okay? Exception to be thrown when validation on an argument annotated with @valid fails. Clear? Why we are talking about this exception? Is that line clear? Yes, it is. Then actually it will be good to talk about its parents. It will be good to talk about the interfaces that actually it is implementing. Then we will talk about the interfaces that actually it is implementing. So if I'm talking about the interface that actually it is implementing, then the thing is going to be, let's say, I'm talking about the next interface. The next exception is called the bind exception. If I'm talking about the bind exception, then can you see that bind exception class is subclass of exception class? So is it going to be a checked exception or is it going to be an unchecked exception? Is it going to be a checked exception or is it going to be an unchecked exception? Definitely, because it is subclass of exception class, so it is going to be a checked exception. Can you see that it is implementing an interface called serializable interface? Did you remember serialization, deserialization, J111 project? Yes, it is. Okay. Then there is one more interface available. The name of the interface is called actually the binding result interface. And it is implementing one more interface. The name of the interface is called error interface. The name of the interface is called error interface. See, bind exception is a class. This is a subclass of exception class, and this class is actually implementing binding result and error interface. By looking at the description here, it looks like that they are the two completely different interfaces. But if I'm coming to the binding result interface, who is the super interface of binding result interface? Please tell me. Which interface is the parent interface of binding result interface? Please tell me. Errors. Errors. So can I say that there is errors available? Below the errors, there is binding result available. And the binding result interface is actually implemented by binding exception class. And the bind exception class is actually a subclass of exception class also. Is that clear? Error, binding result, errors interface. Below the errors interface, there is binding result interface. Below the binding result interface, there is bind exception class available. The bind exception class is subclass of exception class. Okay, one more thing. If I'm talking about the subclass of bind exception class, then the subclass of bind exception class is method argument not valid exception. And the method argument not valid exception is actually inheriting one interface. The name of the interface is actually called the error response. The name of the interface is called error response. So please take a look at this diagram and tell me if it is justified according to whatever hierarchy I told you. Errors interface is there. Below the errors interface, there is binding result interface. Below the binding result interface, binding exception class is there. And below the binding exception class, there is one more class available that is called method argument not valid exception class. Is that clear? Same hierarchy. So to understand properly how exactly method argument not valid exception is getting executed, we have to go step by step. We have to go step by step. We have to understand what is the mean of errors is. We have to understand what is the mean of error responses. This is what everything that actually we have to understand. So first of all, actually, I'm going to discuss to you about the errors interface. First of all, I'm going to discuss to you about the first interface. The name of the first interface is actually called the errors interface. So if I'm talking about the errors interface, then you can see one thing. It stores and exposes information about data binding and validation error for a specific object. Field name can be properties of the target object, e.g. name when binding to a customer object, e.g. name when binding to a customer object. Or nested field in case of sub-object. It supports subtree navigation to set nested path. For example, address validator validate address, not being aware that this is an object of customer. Error objects are single threaded. And if I'm talking about the methods, then can you see that there is one method available that is called get all errors? Yes, you can get list of errors. You can get the error counting also. You can get which field is containing error also. So the previous message that actually I was getting from here, the previous message that I was getting here, can I customize this message using this errors interface? Yes or no? Close relation? Yes, it is. So some methods are available. One of the methods that is actually one of the interface is available that is called the errors interface. The errors interface store and expose information about data binding and validation error to a specific object. This is the first thing that actually errors interface is doing for us. After the errors interface, there is one more thing available that is called the binding result. It is actually general interface that represent the binding result. It extends the error interface and the error registration capabilities, allowing the validator to be applied and the binding specific analysis and model building. It serves as a result holder and obtained using the data binder.getBinder. Well, not so much information is available. But first thing, whatever information or whatever method available from the parent interface, they are already available here. Answer is yes. They are already available here. Answer is yes. Then I'm talking about the third class that is called the bind exception class. I will come back to the binding result interface again. I will come back to the binding result interface available. So see, the bind exception class. The bind exception object is thrown when binding error are considered fatal, implementing the binding result interface to allow for direct analysis of binding errors. So simple logic. Just actually we have to move one by one. The name of the class that I was talking to you was the binding exception class. the name of the class that actually I was talking to you was the bind exception class. So if I'm talking about the bind exception class, let me copy this, let me paste this, let me copy this, let me paste this. So it's thrown when building errors are considered fatal, implementing the binding result interface to allow for direct analysis for binding errors. See, whenever the validation is getting failed, whenever the validation is getting failed, then we are getting information about the field name as well as corresponding error message. Yes or no? Whenever validation is getting failed, then actually we are getting the exception information in the form of the very first thing that we are getting is field name. After the field name, we are getting the proper error message, which is actually not something very good to understand. Right now, if I'm talking about this message, in this message, if I'm talking about the very first thing that we are talking about the field email, that we are talking about the field email, then can you see that all the information about the email starting from there, then it is going to end here. Yes or no? Is that clear, everyone? The information is actually ending here and we are getting this complete range of information. If I'm talking about this complete range of information, this is what actually you can consider very much like an object of error class, object of error interface, or this all is actually available due to errors interface. Field name, so store and expose information about data binding and validation error for a specific object. Then actually the exception that is thrown is called as the binding exception. It's thrown when binding errors are considered fatal. It implements the binding result interface to allow for the direct analysis of the building error. So first and the foremost simple point is available here. Binding exception is there, error message is there. How exactly the error messages are filled into the binding exception? This job is actually done by the binding result interface. This job is actually done by the binding result interface. So it serves as a result holder for the data binder, obtained via the data binder dot actually get binding result method increment, so on. Then everyone, okay, two things are there. Can you see that third thing is also available, that is called error response. And when I'm talking about the error response, so errors is done, binding result is done, bind exception is done, but error response is something that is completely different. Error response is something that is completely different. So if I'm talking about the error response, it is a representation of RFC 7807 error response, that is including status plus error plus problem detail. Read this line two times, please. Read this line two times, please. Have you done? Okay. When I was talking to you about the object of the problem detail, did you remember that I was talking about only the response body? When I was talking to you about the object of the problem detail, then I was telling you that I was talking about the response body only. And this time when I'm talking about the error response, then can you see that into the error response, we are having status plus header plus problem body, all three together. Yes or no? Yes, it is. So simple logic that I can say you here this time. Can you see this line? That whenever I am talking about org.springframework.web.error response, it is status plus header plus formatted problem detail body. Yes or no? Can I write down this one? Okay. So this time, can I say that when I'm talking about the method argument not valid exception, then the method argument not valid exception is actually containing information about each error message. It is a type of exception. And apart from being a type of exception, this exception is something that you can say that relevant to or according to the HTTP protocol. Yes or no? The exception object of method argument not valid exception is something that is according to HTTP standard protocol. Is that clear? Yes, it is. So from this thing, can I say that if I'm talking about the REST API, then REST API is a specification only. And if I'm talking about the Spring Web Starter MVC, then the Spring Boot Starter Web Dependency is just an implementation. Yes or no? REST services are just a standard specification, and the standard specification is implemented in Java using the Spring. In the Python, they are implemented using the Django REST API. Into the PHP, they are also implemented according to their own standard API. So simple, always keep in mind most of the content that I'm covering in the syllabus. Whenever I'm talking about the REST API, whenever I'm talking about the Spring security, mostly you will find that all the specifications are available by default, or they are actually previously defined. Spring is doing nothing, but it is actually just implementing them in the Java programming. That is what actually you have to keep into your mind. Then everyone, binding exception is done, method argument not valid is done. But if I am talking about the message that we are getting, do you wanted to get this message customized, or it is okay? Option 1, you wanted to get it customized. Option number 2, it is beautiful. You wanted to get it customized. Okay. So if you wanted to get it customized, then actually directly come to method argument not valid exception class, and without actually wasting time, directly take a look at the first method. Directly just to take a look at the first method. If I'm talking about the first method, then can you see that there is method available that is called errors to string list? There is one method available. The name of the method is called actually errors to string list. First of all, it is a static method. So can I call this method directly using class name? Can I say that the return type of this method is going to be a list of string? Can I say that it is accepting an object of can I say that it is accepting a list of error objects? Now the question arises that what this object error is. So let me click on this object error. If I'm talking about this object error, it encapsulates an object error. This is a global reason for rejecting an object. But object error, it is a class which is the parent class of object error class. Which is the parent class of object error class? It is field error. It is field error. So let me come to the hierarchy one by one. Can I say that field error class is actually encapsulating the error message about a single field only? Yes or no? The field error class contains information about the error message of a single field only. Yes, it is. And can you see that there are some methods available? Among the methods, one method is called getField method. Second is called getRejectedValue method. These two methods are actually, they are providing us. GetField is actually name of the field, and getRejectedValue is whatever value that is getting rejected. Let me again come back to this response. Let me again come back to this response. So this time, can I say, let me take a simple example. Into the simple example, field error in the object customer on the field email, rejected value is a.in. So can I say that field name is directly available using the method getField? Yes or no? The rejected value is directly available using the method getRejectedValue? Yes or no? Just actually try to spot out what are the elements available. Okay, two things are available. Then I'm coming to again object error. If I'm talking about the object error, it encapsulates the object error that is a global reason for rejecting an object. That is a global reason for rejecting an object. Clear? So we are talking about, see the default message code resolver, Java doc for detail. Here it is, so much things are available. But here everybody, whatever method that are available from superclass, they are as it is. Whatever method that are available from superclass, they are as it is. But if I'm talking about the additional method, can you see that there is one thing available called get object name? There is one thing available that is called get object name. Then everyone talking about this thing. Okay, again coming back to this line. When I'm again coming back to this line, then it is question mark extends object error. So please tell me, is it covariance or contravariance? Is it the case of covariance or contravariance? Is it the case of lower bound or upper bound? Well, batch. The batch is almost on the ventilator. Hardly one or two responses. Sometimes they are okay, sometimes they are incorrect. Seems like that you just wanted to get your syllabus completed. Okay. Okay. So now the next challenge for us is, if we are calling this method, how exactly we will get the list of errors? How we will actually get the list of errors? This is the main challenge that is actually available for us. Okay. So if I'm talking about this method, then convert each given object error to a string in single quotation. Take either the error default message or it is taking the error code. So let me use this method. And if I'm talking about the object error, then definitely object error is directly available and it is getting the default message source resolver. That is not important for us. Since this is available in 10 March 2003, that is also not important for us. And I wanted to specify the list. So how to get the list is the ultimate challenge finally that actually I am having. This is the only thing that actually I am having, that if I am calling the error to list, then I have to specify the parameter. Also, the parameter is going to be the object error. Just a minute, let me come to the STS. Once let me stop this, and once when I am stopping this, then coming here, instead of ex.get message, instead of ex.get message, I'm going to do some stuff. So first, actually, let me make it slightly better. Let me make it slightly better. Error details equal to new error details local dot now. Then the value is going to be null. After writing the value null, then we are going to write down the second parameter, that is going to be URL. Then final thing I'm going to write down as a string. If I'm talking about the message, for the message, I'm writing here ex dot into the ex dot, then actually string boolean throwable property editor. Yeah. Can you see there is one method available that is called get all errors? Can you see there is one method available that is called get all errors? Yes, it is. And if I'm talking about the get all error method, what exactly it is providing me? What exactly it is providing me? It is providing me list of object error. Can I pass this directly to the first method that recently I discussed to you? Yes or no? Yes, it is. You can pass, no problem. So what to do? What to do? See here, what exactly I am doing. So this time I am writing here the point that is going to be, that is a string message. A string message. This is going to be the point that actually we are writing is method argument not valid exception dot. After dot, we are talking about the error to string list. Into the error to string list, we are talking about the all errors. Then we are talking about semicolon. And actually, it is providing me directly one thing that is called list of string. It is providing me list of string. So let me write down list of string. Okay, everyone. One more thing. One more thing. Let me directly come to string class in Java. Let me talk about one thing that is called a string class in Java. Into the string class in Java directly, I'm going to the method, and the name of the method that I'm writing is the join method. Into the join method, everyone, can you see there is join method available that is actually working on the iterables? This is working on the iterables. Okay. Did you remember collection hierarchy? Do you remember collection hierarchy? Okay. Which one is the root interface of collection hierarchy? Which one is the root interface of the collection hierarchy? The answer is iterable. The answer is iterable. Going to the official documentation, opening the iterable interface in Java. Please read the description. Implement this interface, allow an object to be the target of for each loop. To be the target of for each loop. Okay, second question I am asking you, which one is the subinterface of iterable interface? Which one is the subinterface of iterable interface? Collection interface. That's good. So let me jump to the collection interface. If I am talking about the collection interface, into the collection interface, please read the first line. Now again, I'm asking the question to you, which is the root interface of the collection hierarchy? Again, I am asking the question to you, which one is the root hierarchy of the collection hierarchy? Listen, listen. Java was launched in which year? Java was launched in which year? No replies. Okay. Well, collection interface is the root interface of collection hierarchy. Always keep in mind. Iterable interface was actually added later in 1.8, and it is added only just because we wanted to use for each loop. If I'm talking about except for each loop, did you find anything meaningful here? Except for the for each loop, do you find anything meaningful here? Answer is 0. But if I'm talking about the collection interface, don't you think that mostly 90% of the useful methods are part of the collection interface? Yes, that's why collection is considered as the root interface. Iterable interface was not available before Java version 1.8. The iterable interface was first available in version JDK 1.8. Let me open the documentation of version 7 also if it permits. Let me open the documentation of JDK 7 also if actually it permit. See, if I'm talking about the documentation of JDK 7, it is showing iterable, but let me see from which version it is available. From JDK version 5, sorry, it is available. From JDK version 5, actually, it is available. If I'm talking about the iterable interface is available since version 1.5. But if I am talking about the collection interface, the collection interface is actually available since version 1.2. It is available since version 1.2. So for 1.3, 1.4 version, it was not available. What actually the problem with the collection interface is, everything is okay, but actually using the conventional for each loop is not allowed. In JDK 1.5, when for each loop was introduced, then actually they realizes that for each loop is applicable only for the array. We cannot use them for the iterable object. So how to use them for the list? How to use that for the set? To use that for the list and the set, one new interface was added, and this new interface is actually called the iterable interface. The iterable interface is provided just to support the for each loop. Please, please, please never say that this is the root interface of the collection hierarchy. Clear my point? Despite of showing you the lines, still you people were thinking that iterable is how iterable can be. Well, so this thing is done, everyone. Now method argument is there. So I was talking to you about the string class. When I was talking to you about the string class, then in the string class, there is one method available. The name of the method is actually called the join method. And you can see that if I'm talking about the join method, it is talking about the iterable. So simple question. Can I pass the object of list here? Can I pass a list of string here? Answer is yes, definitely I can pass, no problem. Definitely I can pass, no problem. And if I'm talking about this method, it's a static method. Can I call this method directly using class name? Yes, it is. There is no special. So when I can call directly this method using the class name, everyone, so what exactly the pointer that I am doing? I'm talking about the string.join method. When I'm talking about the string.join method, then directly the first parameter that I'm going to pass is going to be, let's say I'm writing slash n. When I'm writing slash n, this is going to be the line separator. The next thing that I'm writing is going to be passing the all errors. When I'm passing the all errors here, then don't you think, what happened? Name of the method is called join method. Why this is not happy? Oh, sorry. The first parameter is required to be a character value. So join method, the first parameter is required to be no char sequence. In case of char sequence, I can use this, no problem. The second parameter is going to be actually, oh, sorry, not string dot join. There is another mistake that I'm doing. The mistake that actually I'm doing is everyone, I have to call this method actually. I have to actually call this method. So what should I do? The thing that actually I should do is I should call method argument not valid exception dot. After the dot, I should call this method. And after calling this method here, actually, I have to specify all errors. Is that clear, everyone? How to get the messages? Please check. This syntax seems slightly complicated for you, but just let me go one by one. First of all, this time, okay, one by one, let me start. First thing, I am getting timestamp. I hope everybody comfortable. First part, I am getting timestamp. I hope everybody comfortable. Second thing, we are getting all the errors using the exception object. Is that also clear? Yes, it is. We are getting the list of objects errors. Is it okay? Now what I need to do, I wanted to convert the same thing into the list of a string. If I wanted to convert the same thing into the list of a string, then to convert the same thing into the list of a string, we have to use method argument not valid exception dot error to string list class. Is that clear? When this is available, then definitely I am having the error messages in the form of a string. Now, when the error messages are available in the form of a string, then directly using the join method, I can convert the list of a string into a single message. Yes or no? When I'm doing the same thing, then definitely I'm writing here. Is that okay? Now, shall I try this example? Let me relaunch the same application again. I think some example number 20 is getting executed. Or I forgot to change the name of the main class. Yes, I forgot to change the name of the main class. Now coming to the postman. After coming to the postman with this bogus data, I am clicking on the send message. And when I click on the send message, then everyone please take a look. Please take a look at the error message now. So this time, everybody, don't you think that this error message is comparatively much better? Yes or no? Can we say that this error message is much better? Yes or no? If you wanted to further actually segregate the keys, further segregate the messages, everything you can do, no problem. Everything you can do, no problem. The same part you can convert in the form of an object also, that is also no problem. But you have to dive deeper into the classes. So well, overall, let me summarize once again everything, whatever I did. First of all, whatever be the objective today was, we wanted to learn validation. How to actually use the validation. First of all, whenever you wanted to talk about the validation, then into your pom.xml file, you have to add a dependency such that the name of the dependency is going to be Spring Boot Starter Web Dependency. Sorry, you have to add the dependency. The name of the dependency is going to be Spring Boot Starter Validation Dependency. The Spring Boot Starter Validation Dependency is internally using the Jakarta Validation API, and the documentation of Jakarta Validation API is what already opened in front of you. What exactly Jakarta Validation API provide? Jakarta Validation API provide that these are the some common mistakes that actually every user is doing. So to write down the validation, you can use OR annotation. When you are talking about using OR annotations, then to use OR annotation, first of all, you have add the dependency. What you should do, first of all, you should create a class. Onto this class, according to your need, on every field, you can write down the validations. Is that okay? First of all, everyone, is that part okay? You can write down the validations. Once you have written the validation, everybody, thereafter actually, if user is providing the proper value, then there is no problem. But let's say that if user is providing the fake value or user is providing the value that is not according to the validation rules, then what will happen? A Spring container will automatically create an object of method argument not valid class. Yes or no? If user is sending the data that is not according to the given validation rule, then ultimately Spring container will treat it like an exception. And Spring container will say that I will create an object of the class. The name of the class is referred as the method argument not valid exception. Is that okay? And to handle the method argument not valid exception, we are writing the global exception handler. Into the global exception handler, we are writing everything. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yes or no? Then everyone, by default, it is providing the messages which is not very much suitable for us. So we wanted to convert the error messages into the suitable format. For this thing, I have just written these 3 lines of code. I have just written these 4 lines of code. After these 4 lines of code, I have converted everything into the object of the error detail and returning the same thing in the form of response entity. So this time actually you can see one thing that we are providing HTTP status code also, we can provide the header also, and apart from the header, we are providing the details also. Is that clear? Is that clear, everyone? Yes, it is. And if I'm talking about the method argument not valid exception class, then the method argument not valid exception class is a subclass of bind exception class. The bind exception class is actually implementing the binding result interface. The binding result interface is implementing the errors interface for error related to every field. The error which is related to every field, it is represented using the errors class. Binding result class is responsible for injecting the error message into the bind exception. The bind exception is containing the error message. So specific type of exception is available that is called method argument not valid exception. If you wanted to convert the errors in the form of a HTTP response, then there is class available, interface available. The name of the interface is called error response interface. And if I'm talking about the error response interface, then in case of the error response interface, it is containing status plus header plus formatted problem body. It is containing status plus header plus formatted problem detail body. This is what exactly we are having. So all that hierarchy with this revision, slightly it is clear in your mind. 60 to 70%. If it is clear by 60 to 70%, still it is okay, don't worry. Because in the first round, you will actually find it only that part. Now, everyone, we are going to head toward the next topic. The next topic is all about the Spring Data JPA. But before talking about the Spring Data JPA, let me come to the documentation again. And this is what documents that are shared to you. This is what a document that is shared to you. In this documentation, everyone, you can see few pointers. Request data validation in the Spring Boot REST API. We need to validate user input detail on the client side of the application using JavaScript, etc. Steps to validate the request data in the Spring Boot REST. Validation API including already told you. The dependency using Hibernate validation API, this is already told you. Assert true annotation, assert false annotation, min annotation, max annotation. Decimal min annotation, decimal max annotation, not null annotation, size annotation, you can specify pattern annotation, past annotation, future annotation, email annotation, credit card number annotation. All that you have to add, you are specifying the message. At the rate valid annotation is something I have already told you. Then we are talking about the exception handler. Finally, one more thing that actually you can do. If you wanted to get the messages from the properties file, if you wanted to get the messages from the property file, you can got also. To get the messages from the properties file, first of all, into the src/main/resources folder, you have to create a file. The name of the file is going to be messages.properties file. Let me show you one very simple example. So this time I am stopping the dependency. After stopping the dependency, src/main/resource. Here I am going to create a new file, and the name of the new file is actually called messages.properties file. Into the messages.properties file, the very first thing that actually we are writing is going to be role.invalid. Into the role.invalid, let's say we are writing the message that roll number is invalid. Thereafter, I am talking about one more thing, that is name.invalid. Name length should be minimum 3 to maximum 10. Okay, coming to the customer class. For the name length, this time I wanted to use one more annotation. The name of the annotation is actually called the size annotation. The name of the annotation is actually called the size annotation. Into the size annotation, the very first thing I am writing is min. Let's say that minimum length I am writing is 3. Then I am talking about the maximum length. Let's say that the maximum length that I am writing is going to be 10. Thereafter, I wanted to write down the message. Into the message, I wanted to write down value that is to be taken directly from the properties file, and to take the value directly from the properties file. To take the value directly from the properties file, what I need to do, whatever be my property name is, that property name I have to take from here. That property name I have to take from here, and I need to write down that property name within the curly braces. I need to write down the property name within the curly braces. Is that clear? This time we are talking about the Spring validator. In case of the Spring validator, do not use dollar symbol. Do not use dollar symbol. Okay, one more thing. There is step 3 also written, but actually since the Spring version 5.0 and onwards, the step number 3 is not required. Clear? from the Spring version 5.0 and onwards, this next step is not required. Earlier it was required, but nowadays it is not required. So please do not include this step. Please do not include this step. So let me check if it is working properly or not. To check if it is working properly or not, I am talking about only the name.invalid. Let me come to the customer class. Here we are writing name.invalid. Here we are writing this part. After writing this part, then doing the right click, run as we are talking about Spring Boot application. And this time, let's say that let the application be run. And after running this application, coming to the postman, let's say that ID of the customer, I am writing one. Name of the customer, let's say that I am writing that the name is OMO. It is actually of 2 characters only. Date I am writing that is going to be 2020. Email address I am writing, let's say that a@v.in. Thereafter, I am talking about the mobile number. For the mobile number, I am writing the value 648. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, let me try. I'm sending there. This format is invalid and everything is okay now. Let me click on the send button. When I'm clicking on the send button, can you see that I'm getting the value directly from the properties file? Yes or no? Can you see that we are getting the value from the properties file? I have not configured the step number 3 because in the Spring version 6, in the Spring Boot version 3.1, the final step is not required. So this is the completion of the validation in case of the Spring Boot. Do you need a break? Or shall I continue for the Spring Data JPA? Enter your choice. Press 1, need 5-minute break. Press 2, continue for the Spring Data JPA. Mix up responses. Mix up responses. Okay. So let us go for a middle way. And the middle way is that I am going to give you a break of just 2 to 3 minutes. Then we will assemble again. Okay. After the break. So actually, now we are starting the agenda of the today. Everybody comfortable with Hibernate? Everyone comfortable with Hibernate? JPA, actually, Hibernate or JPA, whatever you would love to call. So when I'm talking about the Hibernate or JPA, then let me talk to you about some pointers. In the Hibernate, did you remember that whenever you wanted to save something, then you have to call the persist method? Yes. Whenever you have to call the persist method, then first of all, you have to start the transaction. To start the transaction, you have to call the em.begin method, begin transaction method. That was giving you actually one object of entity transaction. Using the entity transaction, you are calling the begin method, then you are calling em.persist method, then you are calling et.commit. So overall, the thing is that time what you were used to do, the very first thing that you used to do is you have, in case of Hibernate, you have written the persistence.xml file that is containing all the connection details. Thereafter, you were talking about, you can say that first of all, you are getting the entity manager factory. Persistence dot create entity manager factory. Then from the entity manager factory, you are getting the entity manager. From the entity manager, you are getting the entity transaction. From the entity transaction, you are starting the transaction, then calling the persist method, or you can say that merge method or the remove method. And then actually you are committing the transaction. Then finally you are closing the entity manager. This is what something that you have done. And if you compare the same thing with the reference to the JDBC, then I think you definitely like Hibernate over the JDBC due to multiple reasons. First of all, into the JDBC, we had a lot of boilerplate code, remember? Yes, it is. In case of JDBC, we are having a lot of boilerplate code. And one more thing that actually you have to think is that in case of JDBC, we have to handle the checked exception also. Yes or no? In case of JDBC, we have to convert the result set into the target object also. Means actually we must know what exactly result set is containing and what is the structure of the target object is. So overall, if we wanted to convert the result set to the DTO or DTO result set to the DTO, then we have to write down a lot of code. All that problem is not available in case of the Hibernate. That's why we like Hibernate. Yes, it is. And if we are talking about the Spring framework, so if somebody is asking you that how to make connection to the database using the Spring framework, so Spring is actually a very flexible framework. It supports JDBC also. it supports Hibernate also, it supports other ORM frameworks also. It supports other ORM frameworks also. So to access the data layer, first of all, we talk about the JDBC approach. Thereafter, we were talking about the ORM based approach. JDBC says that I support both. I am having the Spring JDBC also. I am having the Spring ORM also. If we are talking about the Spring JDBC, then into the Spring JDBC, there is a class available. The name of the class is called JDBC template class. The JDBC template class says that you relax, I will create the connection for you. You just fire the query. It will be automatically done. No need to take care for transaction, etc. I will do. Similarly, there are classes available called the row mapper classes. Whenever you wanted to convert the result set to a destination object or to a DTO object, support is already provided there. So instead of using plain JDBC, definitely Spring JDBC is a better choice. If you are asking that, sir, is it supporting ORM also? Yes, it is supporting ORM also. Into the Spring, there is one framework available. The name of the framework is called Spring ORM framework. The name of the framework is actually called the Spring ORM framework. Into the Spring ORM framework, there is actually a class available that is called Hibernate template class. The Hibernate template class actually allow you to use the specifications of the Hibernate as it is no problem. But then actually, if I'm talking about one of the best way, why I'm using the term one of the best way? Because if you are having a very small project that is containing 3 or 4 tables, in this condition, is it good to go for the ORM? Definitely not. If you are having a very small project that is containing 3-4 tables, then there is no need to go for the ORM. Definitely no. The logic of ORM is useful when you are having a big database. Otherwise, this is completely nonsense to go for ORM unnecessarily, because ORM is having a performance penalty also. ORM is having performance penalty also. Then going to the next part. In order to develop the data access layer, there is one more framework available. That framework is called Spring Data JPA. JPA stands for, again, Java Persistence API. That is called Spring Data JPA. So Spring Data JPA is not a ORM software. It is just a framework that adds extra layer of abstraction on the top of the ORM software like Hibernate. What is the advantage of this extra layer is? In case of Hibernate, everybody, whenever you wanted to perform the insert operation, update operation, delete operation, then you have to perform that operation always within the transaction. Yes or no? Yes, it is. Similar to that, the responsibility of creating the entity manager, the responsibility of creating the entity manager factory, it was also of yours. Yes or no? Yes, it is. In case of Spring Data JPA, neither you have to create the entity manager factory, nor you have to go for the entity manager, nor you have to handle the exceptions, nor you have to actually start the transaction, close the transaction. What if everything is managed by Spring Data JPA? If everything is managed by the Spring Data JPA, then don't you think that development time is going to be reduced and we will get a better support for the user? Yes or no? Okay. In case of Hibernate, connection management is done by the Hibernate itself. In case of Spring Data JPA, also connection management will be done by the Spring Data JPA itself. Is that okay? Connection management will be done by the Spring Data JPA itself. Okay. When you have added the Hibernate dependency, then you have added the MySQL dependency also. Remember? Yes, it is same thing you have to do here also. When you are reading the Spring Data JPA dependency, then actually you have to include the MySQL dependency also. Is that okay? Yes, it is. That's nice. If I'm talking about the @entity annotation, it is as it is. If I'm talking about @ID annotation, it is as it is. @column annotation, it is as it is. If I'm talking about the association mapping, that is one to many, many to one relationship, many to many relationship, one to one relationship. Everything is available here as it is. So don't you think that learning the JPA will be fun for you, such that it is making your life much easier and it is actually managing more things for you. It is managing more things for you. Practical example we may not be able to take today, but first of all, today's project that I'm going to create right now, I'm not going to share that project to you, means along with the today's notes, you will only get one example, that is this example number 23. Example number 24, I'm not going to provide you along with the today's notes, but I am starting with that. So first of all, now validation is not useful for me. Now, validation is not useful for me. I'm actually copying the first Spring Boot app and first Spring Boot web application. Thereafter, this is going to be block 21, SB201, example number 24. Into the example number 24, I'm talking about Spring Data JPA example. So Spring Data JPA example is created here. Let me refresh this project. I'm refreshing this project. After refreshing this project, then I'm writing here. Then going to the next part. After going to the next part, everyone, hello controller, let it be as it is. I do not need much, but first thing, I wanted to create the database connection. Then to create the database connection, everyone, first of all, I have to go to the file. The name of the file is referred as the application.properties file. Now just remember the persistence.xml file of the Hibernate. If you remember the persistence.xml file of the Hibernate, there actually you were defining the URL, yes or no? You define URL, you define driver class name, you define username, you define password. Yes, it is everything you can define here also. Everything you can define here also. So last time we were writing the information in the form of XML persistence tag, but this time no need to take care. Don't worry, this time it is going to be very, very easy. So if I'm talking about database connection related detail, so this is comment I'm writing. Into the comment I'm writing that database connection details is here. So if I'm talking about the database connection detail, the first thing that I need to write down is spring.datasource.url. Into the spring.datasource.url, we are writing JDBC colon MySQL colon / then we are talking about host name, that is localhost. Port number, if you wanted to specify, you can. If you wanted to skip, you can. /. Thereafter, I am talking about the name of the database, and the name of the database that actually I wanted to keep. I used to keep the database name and project name same. I used to keep the database name and project name same so that there should be no confusion in future. This is what database name I'm going to use. So copy. Let me once open the MySQL. After opening the MySQL, then I'm typing the password. After typing the password, I wanted to create a database. So to create a database, initially I'm writing create database, right click, semicolon, enter. I wanted to use the same database. This is what database exactly I'm using. Then coming to first part, that is spring.datasource.url is done. Then I'm writing the next part, that is going to be spring.datasource. Then I'm talking the next thing, that is called the driver class name. And if I'm talking about the driver class name, then the driver class name is going to be com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. Clear? How to write down URL and how to write down the driver class name? Yes, it is. Next thing we have to write down is spring.datasource. Then definitely we have to mention the username. In this case, the username is root. Similarly, spring.datasource.password. For the password, I have to write down the next value. Again, the next value is going to be root. Is that clear, everyone? And now I'm talking about additional database configuration properties. Additional database configuration properties. Into the additional database configuration properties, we are talking about Spring. I'm writing. This time it is going to be spring.jpa. Did you remember one property, show SQL? Did you remember one property, show SQL? Yes, it is. Similarly, did you remember one more property that is called DDL-auto? 4 values were available: create, validate, update, and create drop. But this time, everyone, this property name is having word Hibernate also. This property is having the word Hibernate also. So spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl equal to update. So last time you were writing all the configuration into the XML file. This time you need to write down all the configuration into the properties file. The first point is clear. How to write down the configuration, is that point clear? You have to write down all the configuration in that. If I'm talking about the dependencies, then definitely you have to add the 2 dependencies. This time dev tool dependency, let it be as it is. Web dependency, let it be as it is, no problem, because I will use it to create the REST controller. Then I wanted to add one more dependency. The name of the dependency is actually called the Spring Data JPA dependency. The name of the dependency is called Spring Data JPA dependency. So let me go to the URL that is called the mvnrepository.com. Onto the mvnrepository.com, I am talking about the Spring Data JPA. Spring Data JPA starter dependency. So you can see that the dependency is available here. Directly, I have to copy this dependency, and after copying this dependency, directly I have to add the dependency here. Is that clear? Is that clear? So first dependency I have added. One more dependency that you have to add is MySQL connector jar file. One more dependency that you have to add is MySQL connector jar file. Any version of your choice you can add. Any version of your choice you can add. So Spring dependencies, additional Spring Data JPA dependency is what actually I have to specify. Then I'm specifying one more dependency that is called the MySQL connector J dependency is what exactly we have to specify. Is that point okay? Yes. Thereafter, what I need to do, first of all, the thing that I need to do is I need to update the project. So to update the project, I'm pressing the Alt plus F5, going for the updating the project, clicking on the OK. And after clicking on the OK, then actually I'm talking about the next part that is called the dependency tree. So again, I'm coming on the dependency hierarchy. And when I'm coming on the dependency hierarchy, then you can see that we are available on Spring Boot Starter Data JPA. If I'm talking about the Spring Boot Starter Data JPA dependency, can you see that there is one dependency available that is called Hikari CP? One dependency is available that is called Hikari CP. CP stands for connection pool. So you can read it as Hikari connection pool. It is responsible for managing all the connections to the database. It is responsible for actually making connections to the database. Is that okay? What is the use of Hikari is? Hikari connection pool it is. So by default, Spring is using the Hikari connection pool. Thereafter, SLF is not actually important for us. Spring JDBC dependency is there. Apart from the Spring JDBC dependency, can you see that Hibernate? Can you see that Hibernate core dependency is also available here? Because internally it is actually using the Hibernate. Clear? Internally, actually, it is using the Hibernate. So Hikari CP is one important property. Apart from that, Hibernate core is the another dependency that you should keep in mind why exactly they are here. So this part is done. This part is done. So initially what I told you two things. First thing, what dependency you have to add? You have to add the Spring Data JPA dependency. And apart from adding the Spring Data JPA dependency, we have to add one more dependency that is called MySQL connector J dependency. Second, how to write down the connection information. To write down the connection information, you have to open the application.properties file. And into the application.properties file, you have to write down all the connection related details here. Now, when I'm going to launch the application, then actually all that detail will be read by the Spring container for the first time. When the Spring container will read this detail, so it will actually tell the Hikari connection pool to manage all the connections. So simple thing, keep in mind. If you are making changes in this property file, then you have to restart your application. Yes or no? Second number point, if let's say there is anything mistake, let's say your username is incorrect, your password is incorrect, your database doesn't exist, in this condition, your application will not be able to launch, because as your application launch, these properties are read and Hikari connection pool immediately try to connect to database. And because it is trying to connect to database doesn't exist or anything is wrong, then definitely there is no logic of launching the application. So if this detail is not okay, you will not be able to run your application. Is that clear? You will not be able to run this application. So this is the second point that actually you should keep into mind. Now the question arises, okay, sir, we have added the dependency. Okay, we have created this thing. Can we create the entity classes? Then I will say that creating the entity classes is 100% same as whatever you have done already. Creating the entity classes is 100% same as whatever you have already done already. Clear? Yes, it is. So first package is what actually I have created. I wanted to create a separate package. I wanted to create a separate package for controller. I wanted to create a separate package for controller. So let me do one more thing. I am talking about a package. The name of the package that I'm writing is going to be the controller package. Similar to the controller package, I wanted to create one more package. The name of the package is going to be, let's say that the model, or you can call this package, is going to be my entity package. This package is going to be my entity package. Controller, I am shifting. Controller, I am shifting. Just a second. I think I have done something wrong. No, you are not welcomed. Control Z. And this is not required. By mistake, I have copied incorrect file. Yeah. So hello controller is available in the proper package. Then I'm talking about one entity class. The name of the entity class that actually I am writing is, the name of the entity class I am writing is student. First of all, everyone, for any entity class, do I need to use @entity annotation? Remember? Yes, it is. Can you see into the import statement? We are not importing anything that is specific to Spring. We are not importing that is anything specific to Spring, but actually we are just importing something that is from the data JPA, from the JPA. Is that clear? If you wanted to create with a different table name, then you have to use table annotation. Yes or no? You have to specify, you can specify the additional table name also. Is that okay? One more thing, if I wanted to specify the primary key, then I have to use @ID attribute. Answer is yes. If you wanted to make it automatic, then definitely you have to use generated value annotation. Into the generated value annotation, you have to talk about the strategy. And into the strategy, you have to specify that the strategy is going to be generation type dot identity. Identity is for the auto increment. Remember, yes or no? Yes, it is. Thereafter, let's say I'm talking about the next thing that is called private string name. And because I'm talking about the name, so I'm using one more annotation. The name of the annotation is actually called the column annotation. The name of the annotation is actually called the column annotation. Into the column annotation, I have to add, for example, let's say that if you wanted to create with some different name, you can. Let's say that null label I am setting false. Null label, let's say I am setting false. Unique, let's say that I am setting that the unique value is going to be true. This is what something that I can do. Is that okay? Yes, it is. Let's say name is unique, not null plus unique. Thereafter, I am talking about one more case. Into the one more case, I am talking about the private integer, and into the private integer, we are talking about the thing that is called marks. I am talking about one more thing that is actually called the marks. Thereafter, we are talking about actually the generate constructor using the field. After talking about the generate constructor using the field, we are talking about the generation. And because this is entity class, so definitely it will be good to generate a constructor that is a default constructor. Is that okay? Everyone, is that okay? So additionally, getter setter methods are also required. So let me create the getter setter method also. If you wanted to create the toString method, then definitely you can create the toString method also. Simple, nothing special I am doing. I have just created the entity class. Nothing special I have done. I have created the entity class. Then I am coming to this main class. I'm coming to this main class, doing the right click, run as. Let me run this in the form of a Spring Boot application. And after running in the form of a Spring Boot application, let us see if the application is launching successfully or not. Application is actually launched successfully. Into this successfully launched application, everyone, can you see that it is talking something about the Hikaru pool? Yes or no? Hikaru pool is responsible for connection management. So as your application start, immediately Hikaru pool is activated. It has created some 10 to 20 connections ready-made. In future, whenever you are going to fire a query, then that query will be fired using these connections. You are not supposed to open the connections. You are not supposed to close the connection. This will be done by the Spring Data JPA's Hikaru module automatically. Can you see that it is initializing the JPA entity manager? It is automatically initializing the entity manager factory. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Then OpenView, database query, etc. They are available here. Finally, live reload is available. That is due to DevTool dependency. Tomcat started at the port number. Let me once come to this database. And when I'm coming to this database, right now the database that I'm using is this one. And then I'm talking about that is show tables hitting semicolon. Is there any table available? No. Why not available? Because so far I have not created any object. So far, I have not created any object. Tomorrow, we will talk about performing the CRUD operation on the same. But simple thing, what dependency I have to add? and how to connect to the database, what is the mean of Hikaru pool is, and Spring Data JPA internally using the Hibernate. All that story is clear? All that story is clear? Yes, it is. That's nice. The rest of the things we will discuss into the next class, everyone. You are requested to fill the feedback. You people are requested to fill the feedback. Please go to LMS platform and make sure to fill the feedback. This example we will complete tomorrow. Till that, I will share only the example number 23 to you. Those who have done with the feedback form, they are requested to write one on the chat. Let me turn